Good morning, everyone. If we could take our seats, we'll get started. Thank you all for coming. My name is Gary White. I'm an executive director with the John Maxwell team, and I want to take just a few moments to talk about a few housekeeping items. If you can just look around the room and you'll notice the red exit signs if we were to have to exit for any reason. In the unlikely event, these are your exit signs, and you know directly across the hall, if you exit in the back of the room, is the way that we can get to the outside if we were to need to. If you need restrooms, they're in the hallway to my left, to your right. If you can exit out and head to the restrooms if you need that. Please, if you would, silence your cell phones. I'm sure that the speakers and those listening would certainly appreciate that. So allow me to share just a little bit about myself to really set the stage for today. When I was a young boy, my sisters told me that if I would take an acorn and I would plant it in the backyard, that it would become like one of those big oak trees that we had in our backyard. And I thought, I got to see this. So I took the acorn, I went out there and I dug a little hole and I planted the acorn and I covered it up, put a little water on it, said a prayer, and I sat back and I watched. And I thought, my goodness, why is nothing happening? How do I know that something's happening? And so I'd dig it up and I'd look at it, and I was very disillusioned. There weren't the green sprouts coming out of it, and I thought, well, okay, I just got to get a little more time. I put some more water on it and prayed over it again, and we can all laugh about that right now because, you know, I got a few things right that day, but I got a few things wrong, and we all know what I got wrong, right? Well, let me share with you what I got right that day as a young boy in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I recognized that I had the seed of something significant in the palm of my hand. And I recognized that what I had the potential to become something great. And the second thing I got right was I took action. Now, our paths have intersected today, much like the acorns are cast from the trees by winds. The winds of positive change have brought us all here today. And it's up to us with what we do with that. First of all, recognize that you're holding in your hands something very significant. What's taking place today and what's moving forward out of this is very significant. You will play a very significant part in it. And then second of all, take action. Take what you receive today, let it inspire you, let it fuel you, and then do something with that. Grant Gupton was so sick when he was born. Doctors doubted Grant would survive 30 days. On the 29th day of this month, Grant Gupton will celebrate 30 years, and that is going to be one big party. Please welcome, if you would, to bathe our day with prayer, the former assistant men's golf coach at Spalding University and current member of Governor Matt Bevin's Commonwealth Council on Developmental Disabilities. Make welcome Grant Gupton.
Let's pray. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. Thank you for everybody. Have a good time to fellowship with you. We want you to be happy and proud who we are. We're here right now, we're standing here, that we will be honored of the one mining people that we can share our lives with us forever. Thank you for everything we have done for us. Thank you and love you, and that we always pressure you and we honor you with mighty and glory. Enjoy our lives, we touch our hearts. We love you, and we always into your name. And we always love having you here right now. In Christ's name, we do pray. Amen.
Thank you, Grant. Haley Dubert is a 16-year-old junior from Glasgow High School. Haley is a member of the Boys and Girls Club of Glasgow Barron County. And Haley is with us this morning to share with you her incredible talent. If you haven't heard this young lady, you're in for a treat. Join me and welcome Haley Dubert to the stage as she sings for us, "A Change Is Gonna Come."
I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, and just like the river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know the change don't come. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know the change gon' come. I go to the movies and I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know the change gon' come. Then I go to my brother and I say, brother, help me, please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. And no, there's been times that I thought I wouldn't last for long. Now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know the change gon' come. Oh, yes, sir.
Hey, let's hear it again for Haley. Human trafficking is an uncomfortable subject. And it's something that very few people know a whole lot about. And unfortunately, I believe there's a prevalent mindset that we'd rather not know about it because it's such an uncomfortable subject. I'm so grateful that this event has taken place to raise that awareness. And there's an incredible amount of awareness that comes to us whenever we hear from those that have been involved in it, those that have been a part of it. So if you'll give your attention to the screen, you're going to hear William Edwards' story in his video. Listen.
I came into foster care in May of 2016 when my mother gave me to a man for $50 and 2 packs of cigarettes. I came into foster care. I have had 4 placements. 2016 when my mother gave me to a man for $50 and 2 packs of cigarettes. I have had 4 placements. The first one was a home in Ocala. Then I was moved to a therapeutic home just because they had nowhere for me to go. I was lucky to even have a cot in the living room of this home. Next, I was moved to a foster family in Hernandez County. I was only placed there for a few days, and from there, I ended up in the foster home that I'm in now. My first thought was, this place is odd. By evening, I realized they put me in a house with a bunch of little kids ranging from 4 to 15. My role went from being the baby of my old family to now being the big brother of this new one. Over time here, I learned that having a routine with a schedule and my days planned out actually brought a sense of security. I began making better choices for my life, like quitting smoking. I broke away from my gang affiliations, and I turned away from what I was most proud of, aka the dark side. The most important thing that has changed for me is my outlook on life. After once attempting to end my life, looking back, I can't see myself as that person anymore. The extended support of the church family has a lot to do with that. Foster care, while it's not perfect, it saved my life. This family has helped me answer a question that I've had all my life. Where's God? I'm still working on that question, and He is still working on me.
Wife of Matt Bevin, the dedicated mother to 9 children, and has served as the First Lady of Kentucky since December of 2015. A former pediatric nurse, she has dedicated her office to helping children and families across the Commonwealth, specifically children in Kentucky's foster and adoption care system. Mrs. Bevin has spearheaded multiple initiatives to serve Kentucky's families, including Uniting Kentucky, which has resulted in an increase of 671 foster families. Would you make welcome the First Lady of Kentucky and William Edwards as they make their way to the stage?
Before we get started, I'd just like to say thank you to our First Lady of Texas for coming. Great hardship in her state right now, and we need to keep them bathed in prayer because that's a hard thing. That's a hard thing to be the governor and First Lady of, and know that we have your back if you need anything. The yellow roses are for you, the yellow rose of Texas. I have to think William had a lot to do with that. He's so thoughtful. I'd like to start today by thanking you all for being here, for your hearts for our most vulnerable children. You have come today at your own expense, knowing that there will be no tangible takeaway for you personally. This event is nothing but a labor of love and a learning experience for all of us. I feel the planning process alone has bonded us for a lifetime. Most of you understand that a great deal will be asked of you and expected of you going forward. Yet here you sit, waiting for the ask, because above all else, you love our children. Some of you are here simply to learn more about this topic and where you might fit in. I am confident that at the end of this day, you will be compelled to stand up, step into the gap, and fight with everything you have for our children. But if we're going to be serious about this and do it right, we have to do it as a united front. The task at hand is much too large for any one of us to handle alone. And we have to do this for the children. We have to execute it with excellence. Nothing less will do. Child trafficking as a standalone was not my platform, if you will. I was all about the foster care and adoption reform. I drove our cabinet crazy in our legislature. Just ask them, they'll tell you. This was all due to personal experience, coming from an adoptive parent's perspective, and also my own parents were therapeutic care for 14 years. It was my heart, it was my passion, and it was my sole focus. And then I met this young man. William and his mom were introduced to me through a friend, a mutual friend, and for that I will be forever grateful. William made this issue personal to me. Through him, my eyes were truly opened to the many different aspects of child welfare and how interconnected it all is. It was one of those things where you know, but you really don't know. And then you know. And then you have to do something. Child neglect, abuse, trafficking, juvenile justice, teen substance abuse, homelessness. There are so many needs for our children, but this, the trafficking piece, is our most critical need right now. We cannot fully address this issue for our children unless we band together, united as one mind. One mind across state lines, across party lines, across all things that divide us, and I know there are many. But our differences make us stronger together. Different perspectives and ideas are good. We are created differently to sharpen and build each other up, not to tear each other down. By the end of this day, I would like to have every one of you who are sitting here, who are ready to fight for these kiddos, respond to the email that will be provided to you. I want you to say, I am in, I am all in. This is what I do, this is my passion, this is where I think I can help these kids. We want a focus group that is sleeves rolled up and ready to do whatever it takes to save these children. So back to William. It's difficult to explain what I felt the first time I met William. My girls call him, and his mom, I don't know how she feels about this, my girls call him, oh, that's Mom's William. It's difficult to explain what I felt when I met him, except to say that I knew my life would never be the same. William is a soft-spoken, words chosen wisely kind of guy. He is one of the most thoughtful and attentive people I have ever met in my life. His spirit is pure and giving, and he's lived 10 lives in one. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you William Edwards, the man behind the mission.
It's kind of hard to believe that was me 3 years ago, right? I want to first off by saying, please bear with me. In February, my health went downhill, and in May, I wasn't able to perform or publicly speak. I suffer from PTSD, and I'm also a brittle type 1 diabetic. So, today is about a collaboration on a level that has never been done before. Regardless of what comes next, everyone in this room can say that I stood for the child and I stood first. 30 plus years ago, a little boy died, and that was a national news event. And since then, many more have struggled, like me, and some have died. The news is filled with so many stories of who should be blamed. And, after the fact, they're just trying to find people to blame. One simple thing that could have been done to have saved his life and all the other lives. We could connect our states together through a interstate reporting system. I've been asked if I knew what legislations and policies would be needed. My response is, you could put a man on the moon, and our youth could be in Washington with the United for the Gun Control. Look around this room. No one from the presenters to the guests were paid to come here. This room represents faith-based communities, people from Washington, nonprofits, and the child welfare. And let me end by saying, without First Lady Glenna, and Governor Matt Bevin. Without their willingness to use their platform and their voices, none of this would be possible today. Thank you.
It's powerful. William is one of the founding members of the John Maxwell Team Youth Certification. That's a pathway that John has created not only for adults, but now for the youth to be equipped with the 21 laws of leadership, the 15 laws of growth, the ability to connect with others and be able to succeed in life. So, William, thank you for being such a part. Brooke Burris was first introduced to the human trafficking epidemic as a law clerk in the South Carolina Attorney General's Office, Criminal Prosecution Division. She was determined to do her part to make a difference and later involved herself with the Lynch Foundation in San Diego, which advocates, supports, and empowers victims of human trafficking. Her passion for the cause grew, and in July of 2017, Brooke founded the East Coast branch of the Lynch Foundation for Children. She currently works alongside an incredible team to help victims of exploitation achieve stability, sustainability, and independence. Would you make welcome to the stage Brooke Burris?
Good morning. Thank you so much. Thank you, Governor Bevin and First Lady, for having us, and just for your vision of collaboration and unity over this issue. William, I didn't realize I was going to be after you. Thank you so much for your strength and what you said, and seeing the purpose and redemption in your incredible story. Mr. Lynch is an entrepreneur in San Diego, and he started his foundation in '89 and took on this issue starting in 2014. And one of the big niches that he was seeing was that survivors weren't at the table in strategic discussions. And that's really one of the initiatives we've brought on under our Seeds of Hope program. We really try to advocate for career opportunities for survivors, speaking and being compensated, or being compensated for their mileage like many professionals would be. I'll introduce one of our survivor consultants, the survivor consultant for the East Coast branch of the foundation, Kat Wehunt. She is a speaker, a trainer, and an incredible person with a great sense of humor. She earned her BA in criminal justice with an emphasis in victimology from Florida International University. She's one of 15 in South Carolina trained victim service providers in human trafficking services. She was a victim advocate, the director of administration. She's very proficient in math. She was the care coordinator for Switch, which is a nonprofit in South Carolina. And Kat was the person that law enforcement would call at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. or 7 p.m. right before dinner with her husband. So she's given her, not only taken her story, but really taken it to help and empower others. Some of the training that she's done, she just did statewide training in North Carolina for their State Bureau of Investigations, and the director said it was one of the best trainers that he's ever seen. So she's extremely talented, and we are honored to have her. And without further ado, I'll present Kat Wehunt. Please welcome her.
Hello. I got mic'd up because I like to walk. Thank you guys for having me. I am honored to be here and kind of shocked and astonished. I've been doing this work for the last 6 years and have never seen an initiative like this before. I can't tell you how many politicians I've been in front of, begging and pleading to get somebody to care about something that they should already care about. And the fact that Governor Bevin and First Lady Bevin, that you guys are leading an initiative on this subject means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to the survivors in the room and all over the country. So thank you for having this event. So I'm gonna tell you guys my story, a little bit about where I'm from and how I got here. I'm from Florida. I was born in Jacksonville, Florida, North Florida, but I was raised in South Florida. And like a lot of people nowadays, my parents are divorced. So they got divorced when I was 2 years old. So it wasn't something that was super traumatic for me. It wasn't something that that's all I knew. In fact, I liked it. I mean, double Christmas, double presents. When mom was being annoying, I went to dad's house. So it wasn't a big deal for me. It was normal. But with divorced parents, you do, and if any of you are divorced or have kids, you do the swap. Summer vacations spent with dad, Christmas vacations, spring break, weekends, all of that. So I would travel from North Florida to South Florida. My mom and my dad are the two most opposite people I've ever met. So I can see why they didn't work out. But my mom got remarried. She remarried to a drill sergeant at the time. He was a drill sergeant. And she said, listen, get me a job. I need a job. I'm not relying on a man. So he got her a job at the police station. So both my parents, my stepdad and my mom are cops, are law enforcement. My stepdad's now a captain over the training. My mom's a lieutenant. And then my dad's side of the family was completely opposite. My dad's side of the family was really relaxed. Anything goes. We kind of all partied together. Like I remember at 8 years old, I did my first beer funnel with apple juice because my dad said, if you have my last name, you're going to college, you better learn this. And I was like, all right. So it was one family, if I got a C, I was in trouble. Like I was in big trouble. Like high security, I mean, there's law enforcement in the room, you know. And then the other side of the family was crazy. So I got raised with the very two opposite ends of the spectrum. The funny thing though is I can never remember a time in my life that I wasn't sexually abused. I can never say there was a time pre-abuse. There was no such thing for me. I'm one of 11 kids, and when I would travel to my dad's house, they would stick all of us kids in a room together to watch each other, while all of the adults would go out to the bars drinking and partying all night. And the oldest cousin would watch all of us. And when he would watch all of us, he would abuse all of us sexually. So I never knew that wasn't normal. In fact, I remember drilling my best friend when I was about 13 or something and being like, have you ever been abused? Like, you can tell me. And she was like, no, Kat. And I was like, no, you can tell me. And she was like, no, I've never been abused. But I remember thinking back that I thought that was so bizarre because I thought every family had this happening and nobody talked about it. That's important because when you're looking at trafficking victims, a lot of them, like 70% of them have pre-childhood abuse, right? Because the perpetrators are looking for the most vulnerable to go after, right? And so if you've had abuse in your past, you're an easier target. You've already been manipulated. So that continued on. And then on my 12th birthday, I remember my cousin always telling me about 12, he couldn't wait until I turned 12, and I never really paid much attention to it until on my 12th birthday, I was raped for the first time. And I remember nobody even ever had a sex conversation with me. I couldn't even put into words what was happening to me. All I knew is that whatever had happened was wrong. I knew that whatever what was going on right now was something that shouldn't be going on. I remember that night after that happened, I slept crying, sleeping crouched on my stairs in the house. But I never told anybody because I was abused my whole life. And I never knew to tell anybody. My dad actually was diagnosed with a life-threatening disease called sarcoidosis when I was 8 years old. And I'm a big daddy's girl. And my cousin would use that to manipulate and coerce me. And he would say, if your dad found out, he wouldn't love you. This is disgusting what's happening. And he said, and matter of fact, if he finds out, he'll probably die. So you want to kill your dad? And on top of that, I was kind of all of the older siblings were too far gone, and I was the oldest taking care of a bunch of younger siblings. And he said, and if you don't do this, I'll just go grab your little sister. And I knew that I would do anything to protect her. So I just let it happen, and I didn't tell anybody. That continued every summer break, every Christmas break, until I was 14 years old. When I was 14 years old, it was summertime, and I was there visiting my cousin, and we said, we're gonna go to a party. And my parents said, yeah, go to a party, sounds great. And so we get in the car, we were driving, and he's like, we gotta make a stop at this house. And I was like, okay. And we pull into this house, and I walk into this house, or before we walk into the house, he turns in me in the car, and he's like, listen, these people, I owe them some stuff. I need you to help me out. And then afterwards, I'm gonna get you, we can go shopping. We can, get you something to wear tonight. And I brushed it off and was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And I walk into the house, and inside the house, it was empty. And I remember being like, where's the furniture in this place? And there was like a little love seat, and then there was like a full mini bar set up. And inside the house, there were some girls in there, and I remember at 14 years old looking at them and being like, they're dressed very provocatively. Like, I remember making that mental note, being like, looking at what they were wearing. And there were 3 men in this house, and my cousin said, I need you to go into the back room with them. And he let me go into the back room, and he had these 3 men rape me. And when I found out what happened, and I walked in, I realized what was going down. I started to fight back. And I was like, this is the first time that anyone outside my family had ever abused me. And the more I started fighting back, the more they beat me. Eventually, I just stopped. And I remember hearing and seeing in movies people saying that they saw themselves from above and thinking that was made up. And I literally remember looking at my body from above thinking, oh my God, I'm dying. At 14 years old, this is it. And it was like, I haven't done enough in my life. And then, in 1 second to the next, I was like, well, I hope I die. Oh my God, what if I don't die? I have to live with what just happened for the rest of my life. When they were done, I walked out of the room, and I walked into the living room and ran into my cousin's arms. And he held me and he grabbed me. And a lot of people are like, why would you run into the person's arms that sold you to 3 people? But Stockholm Syndrome is a real thing, and he was the only safety there. And when you go from trauma, when you have intense trauma in your life, you hold on to the good. You grasp onto it white-knuckled. And I ran in his arms, and he rocked me back and forth, and he cleaned me up, and he said, I'll never let this happen to you again. I promise I'll never let this happen to you again. I'm so sorry. And I thought, great. Thank God, this will never happen. Little did I know that was the start of many years for me. From 14 to 17, my cousin sold me to child advocacy lawyers, to law enforcement in uniform, to worship pastors, to teachers, to parents' friends, the people that you would never think would buy a child, I was being sold to. And in that time, I realized there are no safe people. There's no safe. How am I going to go to law enforcement when I have 3 law enforcement clients? I didn't realize what was happening to me for a long time. I blocked it out. I got through it. I did what I had to do. And then at 17 years old, I had an insane experience. I was being dragged to church every once in a while. I had a best friend, and I mean dragged to church. Somebody in school school's youth pastor said, hey, I want you to write a list of 10 people you would think in your school that would be the last people to step foot in church. And I was number 3 on someone's list. And so she invited me to church, and all I can say it was the Lord, because I don't know why I said yes, because I was a very crazy teenager. And I said, sure. I ended up going, and then I ended up going again to a conference. And I go to this conference, and I got radically saved. And I mean, like, heathen to saved in a day. I didn't know all the laws. I didn't know all the rules. I was still going to parties, getting drunk, but I was praying over people, okay? I was like, I have Jesus. Do you need Jesus? Let me lay hands on you, okay? So I didn't have it all together, but I knew in that moment that my life mattered, and that's what changed. I knew that I had value, and I knew that what was happening to me shouldn't have been happening, and I knew that I could do something about it. So at 17 years old, I said, I don't care if I never see my dad again. I'm not going back. I'm not visiting. I'm not doing it. And I didn't. I never went back. And I wasn't magically healed after that. That was the beginning of a hard healing process. And healing is continual, and I'm still marching through it. But I decided to, I still didn't tell anybody till 19 years old. And at 19 years old, I decided to tell my mom. I ended up filing a police report and all of this. And when I filed a police report, it came out that some kids across the street were abused by him. A little girl that was adopted into our family was abused by him. All these people started coming out of the woodwork. And the funny part about it is years later, through the investigation and all of that, nothing happened. Nothing. And that is unfortunate for a lot of people and a lot of survivors. That's the case for a lot of people. And that's why it's so important for us to come together as state. And somebody said last night, this is not a party issue. It's a people issue. And the fact that the only way we're going to be able to target this, the only way we're going to be able to come at this is if we come together and collaborate. Because it wasn't until years later when I started working in the field that I even realized I was trafficked. And if a trafficking victim can't even identify themselves, that means the community doesn't know what trafficking looks like. That means our laws are in place to support, and our politicians don't know what trafficking look like. It's a new topic, but we have to get the word out. We have to spread awareness. We have to point out what's really happening. Because I was standing in the grocery line behind you. I was getting all my doctor's appointments. I graduated high school with a 4.2 in my associate's degree. I wasn't a kid that was not achieving. I wasn't a kid that was, I was bad, but I wasn't, if somebody would have looked at me, they never would have been able to identify that I was being trafficked at home, right? Because they were looking for wrong things. And at 17 years old, I thought I wasn't trafficked. I wasn't duct taped and handcuffed and put into a truck and taken across state lines, because that's what I thought trafficking looked like. So if even our victims aren't identifying themselves, that means we have a problem, right? We gotta start pinpointing. We gotta educate. We have to. So thank you guys. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you on behalf of the survivors in the country. It means a lot. Bring them to the table. Ask them their opinions. They will tell you, sometimes without you asking. It's important to bring that survivor's voice, you know? You have to ask the people that have been there. Ask them. They'll tell you. It's empowering. It's empowering to be able to stand on a stage and talk about my story. Now I get to, Brooke and I were starting a nonprofit. And to think that I went from that, now that I get to serve women who've been in the same shoes as me I'm beyond thankful that I get to do this. So thank you guys for being here. And I hope that you don't just leave this conference and say, wow, that was moving. Wow, that was powerful. But I hope that you write an email. I hope that you get involved. I hope that you go back to your state and do something. Talk to somebody. Even if it's just letting somebody know that you've learned what real trafficking looks like. Thank you guys.
There's one more big thing I forgot to mention about Kat, so I'll backtrack. The South Carolina Attorney General's Office's statewide human trafficking task force has a whole committee that's called the Survivor Advisory Board. So it's made up just of survivors from around the state. And Kat is the chair of that subcommittee for our entire state. So she is great at not only a very personal level, but is able to get to a big picture level to really think through structural gaps and give really great policy consultation. In fact, the sheriff of Charleston County, after sitting with her for 2 hours of his time with another survivor from our area, they came up with an assessment tool to implement in their detention centers, which I'll get to a little bit later. But Kat is just brilliant on that side as well. So I wanted to mention that. And the nonprofit is to fill a gap in our area. There's almost no case management services for adult victims. So with her expertise in that and platform, she'll be the executive director of that nonprofit, and Mr. Lynch is one of the big founding sponsors, but we will need more eventually. Kidding. Okay, next I wanted to introduce another person on our team. Barbara Brown is the Director of Training for the Tri-County Human Trafficking Task Force, which is serving 3 counties, Tri-County, Charleston, and the 2 adjacent counties, Berkeley and Dorchester. So that's in South Carolina. And Barbara she went to the University of Kentucky, actually, and received her Bachelor of Arts in Psychology. Then she went to the Citadel in Charleston and received her Master's of Arts in Social Science, concentrating on criminal justice and psychology. She's a licensed bonded South Carolina private investigator and a certified FBI instructor. She started off her career with being an assistant director at a juvenile alternative service program. She directed juvenile alternative services for first-time felony arrests for juvenile offenders. After that, she went into the FBI and served for 25 years as a special agent. Her expertise includes human trafficking, alien smuggling, visa fraud, Asian gangs, domestic commercial sexual exploitation of children, and organized crime and narcotics. Casual, everyday things. Barbara then founded her own private investigations firm called Iron Gate Investigations, and one of the biggest gaps by far, and as you heard from Kat's story, is lack of effective training, especially for law enforcement and specialized for law enforcement, and they truly are on the front lines. Barbara is a huge asset, and since we've announced that she is doing specialized law enforcement training in the Tri-County area, it is relevant to all the service providers, to almost every stakeholder in this area, and the demand for her training has gone up too quickly for the budget, but it's gonna happen. So please welcome Barbara Brown to the stage.
Good morning. Okay. Well, you already know that I've been in the FBI for over 25 years, and I worked all those multiple violations. What I do have a problem with is that, yes, I worked human trafficking, sex and labor trafficking many years ago. It was towards the end of my career, and we're still talking about it. That's the problem here. We're still talking about human trafficking of men, women, children, and the exploitation of children. But what I'm most proud of while I was working on my investigations was one domestic trafficking case in Atlanta, Georgia. And the reason for that is that we were involved with investigating the fact that there were traffickers out there pimping underage girls. Because of the media attention that occurred during the investigation, the arrests, and subsequent convictions, it forced Georgia to change laws. And the law they had to change was that At that time, it was a misdemeanor to exploit an underage person. They've now made it a felony due to the case that we had, and I'll go into more of that later. One of the international sex trafficking cases involved fraudulent use of student visas for girls from Korea to travel to the U.S. to attend an English language school. They weren't actually attending the school, they were working as prostitutes in the Korean bars in the community. Now and then, people believe, well, that was Atlanta, New York, Miami, Houston. Not in my town, not in my city or state. Well, it is happening in your state, and you need to learn to recognize it. All the states are being impacted. The top 10 trafficking cases reported by state, and your state may be listed there. I don't know who all is here today, but there are multiple states that are being impacted by these crimes. Unfortunately, trafficking or pimping, as it's traditionally referred to, is happening, and the traffickers are becoming younger. Pimping, the game, is being glamorized in music, movies, and books. Children are singing along to songs that say, "Pimp my ride," "Ride my joystick," things like that. These are lyrics that kids are seeing today on their music videos, in their ears as they're walking down the street. Yeah, they're pimping you out. They're pimping you out. Got pimping in my veins, pimping in my blood, pimping in my swag. You get the picture, all right? You may be more familiar with these. We're all about the same age group, some of us here. House of the Rising Sun, The Animals. They're talking about a brothel in Soho. Okay, disco years. Remember Donna Summers, Bad Girls, Hot Stuff. She works hard for her money. That's glamorizing prostitution. Even the Beatles, but it wasn't so derogatory as they were referring to Maggie May. She walked down Lime Street anymore. The judge found her guilty for robbing the homeward bounder. These are issues that we've had to deal with working these cases. Young girls are learning through the videos that they've observed and the music they listen to, that to learn to say things like, does this make me look sexy? She's 12, 13 years old. She's learning to dance provocatively, the booty dancing, the twerking. That becomes, and don't ask me to demonstrate any of these things, because they see all this on their favorite music videos, their concerts they attend. They are desensitized to the inappropriateness of a young girl behaving that way. I'm not trying to be crude or shocking to all of you, but this is the reality we've had to deal with and we're currently dealing with investigations. Some of the street stories that these children have to go through, the nightmares that they've had to deal with, are some stories that we continue to hear. The 10 and 11-year-old that their cousin sold them to a trafficker, the girl that was trunked by a pimp for attempting to cuff money. Being trunked means that you're bound and put in the trunk of a vehicle and driven around town until they decide they want to let you out of the car. Cuffing money means she tried to keep a little bit of money, put it in underneath her wig, tried to secure it in some fashion so she may have some money later because she wasn't given any money of her own. There are girls that are branded with tattoos with the trafficker's name. It's always imprinted on their body. Several girls were bought, sold, and traded to another state because that pimp felt she was overused in the area and wasn't making the money that he wanted her to make. My experiences working human trafficking, organized crime, and gangs and drugs, I just used the same methods to work human trafficking. But I had to learn the federal laws that would apply so that we could charge the traffickers. I had to learn about the street. I had to learn the language. There's a whole different language when you work these type of violations. I had to develop relationships with other agencies. I already knew the FBI was known to take cases, take everything, and not share information. But after meeting with juvenile judges, the juvenile justice system, detention workers, and yes, many, many victims, my intelligence found that I had gathered over 20 traffickers' information. But I didn't know a whole lot about them. All I knew is their nicknames. I had to learn who they were because I didn't know who Scooby, Red, Worm, Hollywood, Sir Charles. It sounded like a cast of cartoon characters to me. I knew I needed the help, so I went out to try and focus and narrow our focus, actually, on those that were involved in trafficking underage persons. We had 20 others we could have looked at as well, but we focused on the underage trafficking. So through my experiences, I coordinated an ad hoc task force, meaning that I brought together law enforcement officers from other agencies to work with me at our task force. And sometimes they were only able to come once a week, depending on what we had going on or what they had going on in their own agency. But through that cooperation and collaboration with all these other people, we were able to charge a 265-count indictment, a RICO indictment, racketeering. That's what you use against the mafia. And we convicted 17 traffickers. This was the case that I referred to earlier that forced Georgia to change their law. These acts that they committed were violent, and that's why the attention was brought so greatly to this investigation. Georgia continues to change laws, and we're hoping that we'll be able to assist South Carolina as well in changing their laws. I was asked to speak about the faces of human trafficking. What I think about are the faces of the survivors and the victims, but I wouldn't want to exploit them anymore to the exploitation they've already had to deal with. So I'm going to show you the faces of human traffickers instead. They're out there. They like the attention, so let's give it to them. The gentleman in green is Scooby, and he liked to wear green. He had a green Cadillac. He's what we call an old school pimp. And the reason he liked green is because he said it was the color of money. The female in the blonde wig was one of his bottoms, and she also branched out on her own, become a trafficker herself. The young man with the girl holding the money is what we call our Romeo pimp. He's romanced her and put her out on the street. The gentleman with the cigar is a trafficker, Hispanic trafficker. He would bring girls in from Mexico, Central America, to become involved in prostitution. Unfortunately, the young lady in the middle was just recently arrested in Georgia last week. She's 23 years old. But because she was arrested as a human trafficker, she was moving young women from Georgia to Louisiana to become involved in prostitution. But you have to think about, perhaps she was also a victim herself and decided to branch out on her own. The white male in the corner is a police officer. I might say a former police officer, 15 years in the police department. And during the undercover sting operation, he was arrested and bragged about the fact that he has managed girls in the past and boasted that he had a cutting-edge system that could avoid getting caught. He claimed he had a way to circumvent the system that he was part of. Recently in Florida, a fireman was actually charged with trafficking too. Each of these persons tells a different story. And the point I'm trying to make is that the traffickers can be found, as Kat has mentioned, in many parts of society. They're young and old, covers all ethnic groups. No one's being eliminated here. We have doctors, lawyers, your neighbor, police officers, firemen, and yes, even politicians. They've all have been or are currently being investigated for exploiting children. And it'll continue unless we all do something to combat the exploitation of these children. A friend recently gave me an analogy of a football team, and I liked that, so I told her I was going to use it today. You have coaches that coach your team, and they practice on the field. We are the speakers here today, are your coaches. Other coaches could be Polaris, Sheriff's Association, Chiefs of Police, Human Health Services, Blue Campaign. They all have resources that can help you learn more about fighting human trafficking. So you as governors can be the quarterback, and you can take that ball that's being passed to you today, and you can run with it and make a name for yourself, for all these people that are out there, not just you, but those that are victimized. Or you can sit on the bench and you can hope that someone else would do it for you. My partner in South Carolina will now give you a method, meaning Brooke Brewers, of how we've incorporated a task force in our state, and we appreciate your attention here today. Thank you.
This is the last time I'll come up here, so yeah. Thank y'all for letting me introduce the two people that I know. So I'll briefly just define what human trafficking is based on the federal definition, which a lot of states have adopted. So many states, their definitions are similar with a few different caveats. Human trafficking, the main two are labor trafficking and sex trafficking. There's also organ trafficking. I won't really get into that. I'll really focus some on the labor and then mostly on the sex. A lot of studies show that, especially on a global level, labor is more prevalent than sex trafficking. Some studies even show it's more prevalent here in the US, but the DOJ has more sex trafficking cases than labor cases. As of now, I would argue it's because sex has been a little bit more prioritized and labor is even harder to identify, and sometimes there's more often a language barrier, cultural barrier there. Human trafficking became a federal law only in 2000. I'm from South Carolina, so I've got that biased perspective there. It became a state crime in South Carolina only in 2012. And every state had the crime by 2013. So we were like one of the last few states to have it. Trafficking, in layman's terms, is essentially when a person, by force, fraud, or coercion, I'll step back, adult human trafficking, we'll start with that, is essentially when a person, by force, fraud, or coercion, those are the three legal terms that the prosecutor with law enforcement, of course, has to prove, a person by force, fraud, or coercion performs a service in exchange for something of value. So, of course, on the labor trafficking side, a service will have a commercial value. Someone cleaning or working in a restaurant or doing a massage, you could say, for something of value. On the sex trafficking side, again for adults, that's performing a sex act, which has a broad definition. It doesn't necessarily, I'll just keep it at that, broad definition. And by force, fraud, or coercion. Force is essentially like kind of the movies, what you would think of there, by using physical violence to force someone into performing these sexual acts. Fraud is often a false promise, so that's oftentimes used on the labor trafficking side, a promise of a job. That's a lot happening in the Chinese community, bringing a lot of women or Korean women over to the U.S., promising a job, and then they'll get over here and it actually becomes working in a massage parlor, an illicit massage parlor, performing a massage with a happy ending at the end. And then the coercion piece is a little bit what ties into Kat's story, where the cousin was using threats or psychological manipulation or abuse to coerce her into forming some of those acts. However, child sex trafficking is that you don't need, under the definition, you do not need those three terms. You don't need to prove force, fraud, or coercion. It's merely when a minor and now I'll get on to a legal little aside. In South Carolina, the age of consent is 16. However, under the trafficking law and under the federal definition, you cannot consent to commercial sex, ever, of course, but you cannot consent to commercial sex, and the threshold is 18. So if you are under 18, you're a minor. It's not that you're 16 and you can consent to commercial sex, and then a law enforcement officer could prosecute you for child prostitution, for being a prostitute. I'll get into that a little bit later, but for a minor, it's a person under 18 performing a sexual act in exchange for something of value. That something of value can be paying a debt for a cousin. That something of value can be drugs. It can be shelter. Food. That's why homeless youth and runaways are so vulnerable to falling into trafficking. In fact, this is an old statistic, and some people would say it's not as robust as it should be, but I think that there is a lot of truth behind it still. The National District Attorneys Association found that within the first 48 hours, 1 in 3 runaways will be approached by a trafficker, but within the first 48 hours of them running away. In terms of some of the policy implementation, just that we've been doing at the local level, we've been asking different law enforcement agencies how many runaway cases they've had, and then how many trafficking cases they've had. And one of our law enforcement agencies, one of our cities that has around 80,000 people, in 2 years had 329 runaway cases and 2 minor sex trafficking victims in 2 years. And I asked if they screened any of the runaway victims that they found for human trafficking. No. So that's one example of a systematic gap that you could begin filling, that Barbara will be a huge part of filling in terms of prioritizing training for patrol officers. And that's some of the work that we're doing in terms of really being on the ground in the weeds of identifying some of these gaps, which I'll get into a little bit later. So that was the definition of human trafficking. I will say a little bit about my speaking style. When I was in 5th grade, I wanted to be a professional tennis player. I really loved Venus Williams, and I would write Venus, not even Brooke, on all of my papers and just turn that in. My teacher knew it was me. I never got to her level quite, but in terms of how I speak, I really do love tennis, and I'm sure many of you know the ball machine. It sits there and it is very stable, but the ball is going. You never really know where it's going. That's a little bit how I will maybe talk. Trafficking is a really dynamic issue. It's hit so many different levels, and I really want this to be substantive and give you nuggets to maybe go take an action step off of. So it'll be little ideas, and they'll connect to a degree. And so thank you in advance for working with me. I'll say one story. Last year in South Carolina, there was a 17-year-old who was taken into foster care because her mom was neglecting her. She was in foster care for neglect. One of our DSS social workers who had been trained on the issue felt like it may be a trafficking case, and when she spoke with the potential victim, she said that her mom told her she wasn't a trafficking victim because those girls are either killed or tied up, and you're living with me, and I feed you 3 meals a day. And the girl was able to tell this social worker that. I asked the social worker if law enforcement was investigating the mother, and she said she didn't know. So we tried to connect them. They were in different counties where the group home was and where the mother was, and then the police department said, well, that's probably actually a sheriff's office's thing. Then we try to find the sheriff's point of contact. They've never had a trafficking case in that county. And the girl was aging out of foster care in 2 months. And we had no specialized home for her to go to. And that case fell through. And she's now 18, and she's out of the system, and the mother's never been investigated to my knowledge. And apparently, the social worker had evidence that the mother was keeping the daughter in a shed in the back and selling her to pay off her rent every month in exchange for something of value. And that case has never gone anywhere. So that's just an example of the importance of the collaboration and the unity, because these cases really do fall through if everyone's not on the same page, and there's really got to be tight collaboration. So again, thank y'all so much for this vision, because it really is what it takes to have people access their legal rights. This issue for me is a lot about stability and integrity. The stability of our family structure and of our citizens. De Tocqueville said that a healthy democracy is measured by the quality of the function of its private citizens. And that's really where this is going to some of the most vulnerable. And if we can boost them up, it makes our democracy that much more stable. On the other side, it's the integrity of the rule of law and our legal justice system, which is one of the most amazing things about this nation that we live in. So other than a spiritual level, which is more on a personal side, those two things are really what drives me in this issue. I'm going to go to some of the structural, the tennis ball part. So in 2018, the South Carolina Attorney General's Office found that Charleston County, which is like almost 800,000 people, was the second most prevalent area in the state for human trafficking. That same month, the Department of State, on a federal level, their Trafficking in Persons report, which comes out annually, found that trafficking is a global problem really solved on a local or regional level with a multidisciplinary response. Again, focusing on that tight-knit collaboration. So I'm going to get a little bit of like structure and context. I went to law school. I never practiced law. I filed a wage claim for one J1 student, and that's all. So I'm much more experienced on the structural kind of context of things. So that's where I'll go. That is the Tri-County. When you're thinking about a local or regional response, or maybe dividing up your state's response, it's really important to have a jurisdictional lens. So South Carolina has 46 counties. The Tri-County area is Charleston, Berkeley, and Dorchester County, and they connect in multiple ways. It's 2 judicial circuits, so we have 16 judicial circuits in our state. If I had started over again, I maybe would have just done Charleston and Berkeley as one judicial circuit, and then Dorchester, we would have left them out. I hope this isn't filmed. Yeah, whoops. But just to think about it jurisdictionally, because then we would have been working with one solicitor, one court system, and now it just doubles the work there. And the solicitor in Dorchester has 2 other counties, so it's like we're not quite as relevant. So I just wanted to give you a sense of that's where we're located. Charleston Harbor is right there. As you know, it's like the 8th biggest port or something, busiest port, and about 800,000 people. This is the structure of the task force. It's a lot of subcommittees, and this is mirrored after the Attorney General's Office's structure. I'll go back 1 second and say that the Attorney General's Office, what they've done, which is really brilliant under Alan Wilson, who's headed up this issue for since 2012 when it became a law, they've made regional task forces. So this is coming off of Tennessee's model of having a single point of contact. Tennessee has 4 single point of contacts around their state, and it's essentially like that contact is in charge of knowing all the points of contact underneath them in their region. So that's how they're kind of trying to structure their collaboration. Our Attorney General's Office, if I knew how to go back with the clicker, we have about 7 task forces, so that's a lot, and the goal is that they're each single points of contact. Oh, Sarah rocks. But when I was asked to start the task force, we were given no funding. None of us work for the Attorney General's office. So all of the task forces look very different, and we could create the structure as we saw fit. So task force is a loose term. That's just something else to maybe think about. This is how we're structured. There's the chair. We have a survivor advisory board on the local level. Direct services for adults and children, that's distinct. Healthcare, you can read it. Legal innovations, that's pro bono attorneys. A lot of these victims who come out are haunted by a record of prostitution. We worked with a victim who was found arrested in South Carolina in 2012. It's 2019, and she still has her prostitution record from Myrtle Beach in Horry County. So that's where the collaboration begins. The foundation paid her filing fee. In some states, their victims assistance network will pay that filing fee, and we had a pro bono attorney help her get that expunged. But when an adult, maybe they're out of the life now, and they're trying to get a new job, or even rent an apartment, that record, or in a custody battle, that record follows them. So it is a huge handicap. That's where the Legal Innovations Group comes in. A lot of states have a structure where there are pro bono attorneys working on this, and I'm running out of time. The Youth Advocacy Club is where a lot of, we're going into different schools and actually having a club in the school to help the teachers who are mandated to teach on this issue have a sustainable and point of contact platform, and help foster a protocol with the school resource officers, so actually within the school, and make sure there's a trained teacher in the school. Data and research has been extremely hard, but we got, first I just thought, I can just ask everyone and do FOIAs and collect data, but I'm not a professor, and so no one really took me too seriously. So we got College of Charleston and the Citadel on board, and they're just beginning to really structure and legitimize some of the local data. When I was in San Diego for a year, 2 universities teamed up and did a study just on San Diego County, and it changed the whole trajectory of how the county addressed this issue and prioritized this issue. It's so much easier to get money from San Diego County because of that study than it is in like Charleston County, because there's almost no data. And when I started this task force, that was one of the beginning priorities, and almost every law enforcement's number was 0. So that just, it's hard to start there. We had 180 prostitution arrests, and then I went to at-risk data, prostitution arrests, runaway cases, homeless youth, 180 prostitution arrests from one of our detention centers in 2 years, 422 homeless youth for one of the smaller counties, and still no screening for them. So that's kind of this, again, kind of structural thing. I'm running out of time, so I'll go quickly to this. In terms of categorizing how to see what a community is doing and how they're responding, the Attorney General's office came up with this continuum of care model. First, as you can see, is identify the victim. So then you wonder, okay, who are the frontline people? Are they being trained? So that's patrol officers. Mandated reporters is already enough. Mandated reporters. In South Carolina, in terms of legislation and implementation of that, just last year, we were one of the last states, but we did it. We changed the definition of child abuse and neglect, I'm sure many of your states already have, to include all forms of human trafficking. This was only last year. That affects all mandated reporters to now be required to identify and report on human trafficking. Now, how was that being implemented, that kind of training and that new responsibility? DSS had our social services hired one person to train social workers, which was a 3-hour training. It was a great training, but that lasted for about 5 months. And then that was over. As you know, social workers have one of the hardest jobs, and the turnover is high. So now the implementation is 2 people around the state who've never worked a human trafficking case. They train mandated reporters around our entire state, and their trafficking portion's about 5 minutes. And so that right now is the structural funded training by the state. That's how the legislation is being implemented. In terms of training for law enforcement, our patrol officers are trained for 1 hour. So legislatively, it would check the box, because legislatively, it's mandated for law enforcement to be trained. But how that looks in practice is they're trained for 1 hour by someone, an officer who's never had a trafficking case. That's, again, why we have Barbara and why some of these things are falling through the cracks, why the detention center tool is being implemented. So that's just some of the policy implementation. And there were two, because this is about collaboration, I'm almost done, Sarah. Because this is about collaboration, I wanted to just briefly mention 2 collaborative models other than the task force structure, which is the multidisciplinary structure, just to kind of throw out the ideas. The first is the Family Justice Center, which I'm sure many of your states have one. South Carolina has one, but it's not in the Charleston area. In San Diego, which is where the foundation is based, there was the first Family Justice Center. Family Justice Center is a co-located, is a building where there are co-located services. So it's usually a victim service provider, maybe law enforcement, a prosecutor, maybe a healthcare provider. It mostly focuses on sexual assault and domestic violence, but just in San Diego, the foundation was one of 2 entities to expand it to serve human trafficking victims. The power of this model is that it's extremely cohesive collaboration. Everyone's on the same page. And just one stat on the San Diego one, when they brought in the healthcare clinic in-house, domestic violence convictions went up from 34% to 70% within a year, just by bringing in. So that's just showing you the importance of the collaboration, and I'm almost done. One last thing, this is a little bit of something that we're working on, but traffickers use technology against us. It's easier to do the transaction. We could set up shop here. I can take a picture, post it, and people will come. So they are grooming girls and boys on social media. Technology has been a great force of awful, evil power for them. For us, law enforcement has used technology in an amazing way. And I feel like what I've seen is a gap between law enforcement and victim service providers and all of the other amazing citizens who are interested in being involved in being connected and being coordinated. So the idea of this human trafficking app force, like human trafficking task force, it does not exist yet, but maybe working on it, is to connect everyone in a very categorized and streamlined manner. So all communities need at least a baseline response that's similar across all communities, whether you're in South Carolina or Alaska or Kentucky. And the goal of this is to identify best practices, like an information sharing agreement. You can go ahead and in this app, in this database, you would create information sharing agreements and go ahead and streamline that. In this setting, you could download the app just like First Lady Bevan's action step idea and sustainable idea for you to email her, which is brilliant because it connects us. This app would be, you can download the app, create a profile that's categorized to your skills. And then the vetting process, which is different in every state, different in every county, would already be streamlined. You can pay for it on your app, and you would go ahead and the connections would begin. With law enforcement, you can see the dark gray is the very vetted entities. That would be like law enforcement, and then the 3 p.m. call, which is Kat, and you would know when she's on call or not because she would sign into the app. So this is just another collaborative idea. I'm done, and I think I went 2 minutes over. Okay, thank y'all very much.
So there's a lot of challenges, right? A lot of challenges. Robert Lauder is an entrepreneur and inventor. Watching with alarm as the internet and mobile phone age brought with it a high-tech way for child predators to ensnare victims, Robert invented Radar. Radar is an application that enables local law enforcement, FBI, and Homeland Security to track, archive, and aid during the prosecution of would-be offenders before they can do physical harm to children. Radar, which Robert initially provided at no cost to law enforcement agencies, has helped capture and convict more than 2,000 child predators over the past 8 years. Would you make welcome to the stage Robert Lauder?
Good morning, everyone. What an honor to be here. First of all, I'd like to thank the Governor and First Lady, Bevan. Met the Governor, I don't know, 6 or 7 weeks ago. He's visiting us in California on a beautiful summer or spring, late spring, summer day. And met quite by accident through some friends of mine, and we had a little discussion, and it didn't take very long before the Governor brought up the subject very dear to the First Lady about human trafficking. And I think I made a comment about some of the work I did, and he invited me to come, and I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be part of this. And boy, the fascinating work, Kat, Brooke, that's fascinating. I'm really proud of you, and I'm really thankful for you. I'm from Indiana, and I'm really happy to be here in Kentucky. I guess if you're from Kentucky, you're called a Kentuckian. But if you're from Indiana, you're called a Hoosier. I'm not quite sure what that means. Here in Kentucky, you're famous for Abraham Lincoln and the Kentucky Derby. In Indiana, we're famous for being Hoosiers. So anyway, it's great to be here. I didn't really think I was involved in human trafficking or anti-human trafficking or the human trafficking cause. I got into this quite by accident after serving about a decade in the military. I got out, and I still needed to have some kind of esprit de corps, so I went and volunteered to do work at the Orange County Sheriff's Department in Orange County, California. For a few years, I was what they called a Special Services Reserve, and I carried a badge, and I helped the sheriff with everything from their BlackBerry devices to other kind of funny issues. And then they asked me to be a chairman of the inmate reentry program there. I was the first chairman of the reentry program there in Orange County, California. And one day I was sitting in my office, and I got a phone call from the sheriff. And he said, Robert, I got a problem I think you might be able to help me with. Is it okay with you if I send a detective over to your office? I said, sure, Sheriff, no problem. Send him right over. I didn't really know what it was about, but the sheriff calls. You know, I'm going to step up and see if I can help. So a detective came over to my office and sat down and said, we have a problem. I've been asked by the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force to assist in a problem with an 11-year-old child. I go, okay, well, how can I help you? I'm not sure what I can do, but go ahead, tell me the story. So it turns out that it was an 11-year-old little girl who was vacationing in California. She was vacationing in 29 Palms, visiting her grandmother. She was from Colorado Springs, Colorado. And Grandma took her to a water park and gave her a flip phone. Now, this is before the Androids and the iPhones and all these kind of things. Everybody just had flip phones. So Grandma gave this 11-year-old girl a flip phone and left her at the water park. And shortly after she was there, the little girl was approached by a 29-year-old male who convinced her to exchange phone numbers. Probably pretty innocent for a child, very easy. I always tell people, children aren't bad, they're immature. They don't understand the ramifications of things. Their decision-making process isn't quite there. So when you tell a child that, to avoid strangers, for example, we'll talk about this more later, they don't consider someone younger to be in that category, for example. But anyway, so he exchanged phone numbers and pretty soon started sending her lewd photographs and also giving her coaching and instructions on how to send him pictures. So when the little girl got home and the phone got back into possession of Grandma and she saw these photographs and everything on there, she went to her neighbor who was a police officer and said, what do I do with this? Well, he didn't know what to do with it, so he called the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. They didn't know what to do with it. They were working on the internet, right? Flip phones? What do you do with a phone? So they came to me, the autistic brain damage guy who worked on nuclear weapons for 10 years. And so what I did is, at that time, I had a technology. I was working with BlackBerry, the company Research in Motion, and we developed this platform that was used, and AT&T marketed it and so forth. So I knew a little bit about these devices. So I sat down and I started to engineer. I started to draw out an engineering diagram of, well, maybe how could we capture evidence on a phone? Because the problem was, in order to get an arrest warrant, let alone a conviction, and there's a lot of lawyers and smart people in the room here, you have to maintain the chain of custody of evidence. So there's pictures on this child's phone from this other phone number. We could probably subpoena that. But what if the perp said, oh, I lost my phone? Or I have no idea what you're talking about. Somebody must have took my phone when I was asleep. So in those days, this is the early 2000s, law enforcement really didn't know what to do about this problem. And in fact, they didn't even know it existed, really. So we developed this application called Radar. And Radar was basically based on the BlackBerry platform. It's one of the great things Research in Motion partnered with me on, and when we developed this technology, back in those days, everybody in law enforcement and most people in government carried BlackBerries because they're secure smartphone technology. So what we did is we took this technology, and when we got evidence that there was a perp pursuing a child on a phone, and you're going to learn more about this by my next guest. I asked the governor if I could bring a few people, so I brought some special people that are going to share some more valuable information with you about this problem with smartphones and children. What we did was, I figured out I would have meetings with all these policemen, and I'd say, okay, so what does chain of custody mean? What does this mean? What does that mean? How do you do an arrest? How do you get a warrant? And I learned all their procedures, and I built it into the technology. So what we did was, we said, okay, if there's a problem on this child's phone, we call the carrier and switch the phone number over to the law enforcement officer's device. And then we trained, and this was really fun doing this, we trained the law enforcement officer to pretend they were the child. And we continue the dialogue. And we would continue to capture text messages, pictures, and phone logs. And I worked with one detective who worked out of the AG's office in Colorado. In 2 months, we did 37 arrests. In 90 days, I think we did 60-some arrests. And his wife used to play the part of the child. So we had a lot of experience in this. So we trained the police officers how to continue the dialogue, and then we'd capture the evidence on the device, and then we would lure them to McDonald's. Let's meet at McDonald's, places like that. So we had a Verizon wireless executive fly all the way from New Jersey to McDonald's in Colorado, where we arrested him in the parking lot. We had a tenured professor at the University of Colorado. We arrested him in the library with troves and troves of child porn on school computers. He was using the school computer network to move child porn around the world. We unfortunately arrested a deputy sheriff. We arrested the fire chief in Jefferson County, Colorado, the largest county in Colorado. We've worked with the London Yard. Worked on cases as far away as Algeria, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Mexico, all over the United States. Thousands and thousands of child predators. And we have a 100% conviction rate. We've never had a single case. Thank you. We never had a single case where our evidence wasn't taken in, and the person, if we caught them, they went to prison. They actually went to prison. So what does this have to do with human trafficking? Kind of sounds like a cyberbullying thing. Well, what this really is children, we think of human trafficking, we're talking about this coercion or the physical proximity. But what happens on mobile technology and the internet is children are groomed, and weak children and children who have problems, emotional problems, they're sought out. And once this perp, who, by the way, over the internet or the phone can pretend to be a 16-year-old, right? One of the cases we did, we had a 57-year-old who claimed to be a 16-year-old golfer, straight A student at the high school down the road, lured this child out of her home, and, turns out he was 57. So this is what happens. So cell phones, mobile devices are very dangerous because the internet is omnipresent in the child's life every minute of every day. You see them, right? They're on their device, and you really don't know who they're talking to. So then we said, gosh, law enforcement is reactive. Something happened, and then they react. And the faster they react, the more likely it is that we'll get the child out of harm's way. It doesn't always work that way. When I realized how big this problem was, I started to think, geez, we need to do something to empower parents to be part of the global network, if you will, to protect children. So we created a product called My Mobile Watchdog. As a result of this work, and I also met, and we'll introduce Detective Rich Wistocki here in a minute. I think we did some cases together. We provided some forensic devices for him to do some convictions back in the Chicago area. And he's now continued that. Rich has spent, I think, 22 years in the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. He's probably the world's leading expert on child safety and smart devices and what we need to do. But we started this really early, back in the early 2000s. And so My Mobile Watchdog is for moms and dads to monitor their children. And I would say this, I'll leave you with this. The single most important thing you need to know is who is in your child's life. It's more important than anything, because the minute a stranger comes into your child's life, you want to know, and you want to evaluate who this person is, and you want to know who they are, and that's the primary way to keep your child safe. As we've learned, unfortunately, from Kat's discussion, is things can happen under your awareness level. And so in order to protect kids, we have to be vigilant. And one of the ways to do that is their social world, their social gateway to everything in their life is through these devices. Shouldn't we have a handle on that? If I were to propose something for us to think about in this room, besides technology and law enforcement and structure and cooperation and all these great ideas, which are all very, very, very valid, I would say we need to introduce some laws where the telecom industry that's providing this access to children takes more responsibility. The number one way for a telecom to grow is by selling more phones to children. And generally speaking, they don't want to alienate children. So at the risk of selling phones, we have safety issues. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to see a law. A child can't enter into a contract. They shouldn't be able to have a device without the telephone company knowing they're a child and having certain precautions on there that protect them and allow the parents to easily monitor who. And there's a lot of ideas around that. Hopefully, as we're here through this, the rest of this day and this evening, I feel free to come up to me and talk about your ideas, or we'll share ideas and we'll try to collaborate. Having said that, again, it's an honor to be here. I'd like to go ahead and have retired Detective Rich Wistocki come up. And I think we're going to do a little video first, right, Rich? And then he's going to come up and talk. Thank you very much.
What is he doing on that phone? How many of you have asked that same very question to the teens in your life? What the heck are they doing on that phone? Good evening, my name is Detective Rich Wistocki. I've been a police officer for 30 years, my last 22 years with the city of Naperville investigating computer crime and protecting children online. I'm about to say something that may upset you. If you want to get up and leave or turn off this program, I get it. But it takes someone like me to tell it to you to your faces what's going on. And here it is. All of you here tonight are responsible for your children. I'm sorry I just upset you. But it's true. You see, you're not only responsible for your children with their food, clothing, shelter, and education, you are responsible for their technology as well. Because if you're not checking their Roblox, their Minecraft, their Musical.ly, their Snapchat, their Instagram, if you're not checking contacts, monitoring remotely, having that technology talk with them, somebody else will be. Is that what you want? You see, ladies and gentlemen, when we give our children at the ripe old age of 11 this ominous device, it's like giving them the keys to your brand new Mercedes and going, sweetheart, you can go to Vegas, you can go to Florida, you can go to New York, wherever you want to go. And when you come back, mommy and daddy will fill that tank up and you can just go again. But just don't tell us if you did anything wrong. Because you never would do that, would you, sweetheart? No, Mom. You see, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about what we are responsible for, I travel all over the United States teaching in schools. When I teach my students, I talk to them about their contacts. We talk about verification, that they have to know before they release any personal information, 5 things. First name, last name, where they go to school, their phone number, and where they live. If you can't physically verify what those things are, like Jimmy in my gym class lives there, Sarah on my soccer team lives there, and she plays for that team, that's a verification. I tell them that everyone else online is a liar. That is your base when you're traversing online. So let's talk about how you talk to your kids. What is your current technology talk to your kids? Does it go something like this? If you take bad pictures, if you take bad video, if you tell people where we live, you're gonna be grounded. I'm gonna take your phone away. You're not gonna see the light of day, you're not gonna go out with your friend, and the door's gonna come off the hinges of your bedroom. If you do that. How many of you have done that? Yeah, I see some hands out there. Well, when you do that, are your kids going to come to you? No, they won't. So when you have this technology talk with your kids, I'm gonna show you what that should look like. But first, we have to concentrate on one simple foundational premise of the technology talk on what you are responsible for your kids. There is no such thing as privacy for children. Can I get an amen? Amen. Yes. That you are responsible for your kids because you buy them the device. I don't care if Nana, Nonu, Grandpa, Tia bought them that device. They don't own it. You allow them to have it. They own nothing because you're responsible. So when we talk about this technology talk, I talk to parents something about called the golden ticket. What the golden ticket says is that you're gonna sit down with your kids and have that technology talk. You're gonna go through their contacts, you're gonna monitor remotely, and you're gonna sit down with them and say, man, I saw this guy speaking at the school the other day. I had no idea what was going on your social media. Listen, I know mom and dad were going like this to you, but none of that. If you come to us and if you feel like someone's making you do something you don't want to do, or somebody making you feel bad about yourself, you need to come to us. If you come to us, we're going to give you that golden ticket. And that golden ticket means that we're not going to give you consequences. We're not going to ground you. You're not going to lose your phone. We're not going to keep you from your friends. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the average internet predator has 250 victims in their lifetime. 250. And odds are, if they're doing something bad to your kid, they're doing it to 20, 30 others at the same time. So the technology talk is so important. I've got another question for you. How many of you allow your children to charge their devices in their rooms at night? The common denominator in all my sextortion, child exploitation cases is that when the parent allows them to charge their devices in their rooms at night, you're sleeping. They shut the door so you can't hear them. It's not a matter of talking. It's typing, reading, and performing. With apps like the Chromebook they get from school going in to Google Hangouts, ooVoo, Omegle, Skype, House Party. These are video chat sites that our kids are using, and there are 2 to 6 people in that chat room while they're in their bedroom. Remember when we used to play spin the bottle and truth or dare, somebody's basement, the park, wherever? Remember when we were kids? Well, our kids are playing truth or dare. You know where they're playing it? On their devices in their rooms at night. So when the people in the room, it's your kid's turn for the dare, we dare you to flash us. Okay, no big deal. 3 days later, that person who was in the room who did a screen capture of what your son or daughter just did, hey, how do you like your new Instagram account without you flashing everybody? If you don't give me pictures and videos every week when I want them, this is going out to your entire class. This is gonna go out to everybody you know in your family if you don't give me the picture and the videos that I want. And what you're gonna say, oh my God, I can't believe it. What am I gonna do? I gotta go to my parents. If I go to my parents, you're gonna be grounded. We're gonna take your phone away. You're not gonna see the light of day. I don't wanna be grounded. I don't wanna lose my phone. I don't wanna embarrass myself. It's only one picture. It's only one video. I'll just take the video. It's never one picture. It's never one video. It'll continue till your kids cannot handle it anymore. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, ladies and gentlemen, has created a fantastic PSA. And what I've just described for you is a new phenomenon and a crime called sextortion.
Hi, Zach. Here's another video from my special guy. I can't believe we haven't talked all day. I wish you went to my school or a little closer so we could finally meet.
Hey, kiddo. Dinner in an hour. Don't spend too long on the phone.
Okay, I know you've been waiting for this for a while, so I wanted to give you something special. Is this okay?
Who are you? Why are you doing this?
are responsible for your children. We need to monitor. We need to talk to the technology, talk to them. We need to check their contacts because we want to raise great digital citizens. And you are responsible for that. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. We need to make parents aware of what's going on with their children's technology. From trafficking to cyberbullying to suicide to sexting, sextortion, and drug abuse, where is that information? It's in their cell phones. This is their swagger. This is their reputation. This is how they communicate. This is how they buy drugs, sell each other. Is through their technology. So after I did this TED Talk, I spent 28 years at the Naperville Police Department. When I did my TED Talk and they released it at the end of 2017, I was getting calls from all over the country to go in schools and do this. And I have made it my calling and my mission to answer that call to any school district that would have me come present. I will do that. So much so that I was only at the Naperville Police Department probably 3 days a week, and my bosses were like, dude, you need to train somebody before you leave. And I was like, okay, you got me. So I belong to ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. I still belong to ICAC even after my retirement. And after I retired, it gave me more opportunities to create and scale, because I can't go everywhere. I have a staff of all retired ICAC investigators. So we go out throughout the country and we train parents, students, faculty, and law enforcement. So one of the things that the stakeholders in this room, we all heard what the problem was this morning. Now I want to show you exactly how trafficking works online. We are going to see 3 different aspects of how you in your states can affect trafficking. And it starts with being online. The ICAC, in cooperation with the Department of Justice and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, has created another great video on how trafficking happens online. And I want to share that with you. Here we go.
Can anyone tell me what the different chromosome is for a male versus a female? Yes.
XX is female and XY is male.
Correct?
This is chromosome here.
No, it's down. It's right here. That's important. We're trying to study. What is this?
Nothing.
What is this? What are you doing? doing? Nothing. Who is that? Nobody. Who is that? Who are you texting? Nobody.
So you didn't tell your parents that you were coming over here tonight, right? You ain't gonna chill with us?
Get off me!
What the hell is your problem?
Who the hell you think you are? Huh? Right now!
Hey. It's gonna be fun. Come over here.
So in this video, this is how it happens. We have students who are on Facebook, their Instagram, their Snapchat, and there are traffickers waiting for them to get in contact with them. They may contact 10 to 20 young girls who are not going to college. And they ask them if they want to be a model. And then they meet someone like this. And they have no idea what they're about to go into. But this person is telling them things that make them feel good about themselves. The way you wear your hair, you're so beautiful. The way you wear your makeup. So then you see the very bright student that answers questions in school and studies. And then they meet someone like the trafficker. Then you see the parent catches the kid sexting with someone. And then you see a teacher watching this all go down and doesn't know what to do. So what we decided to do is that we decided to show all of you here today what the solutions are in this horrible problem of sex trafficking, especially online. Well, the first thing we need to do is that we need to train our parents, our guardians, our foster parents, because so many kids are going in and out of these homes, and so many kids are so addicted to their technology. And when you have a kid who you say, no, you're not getting a cell phone because you're at risk, ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you that at every single school in the United States, junior high and high school, there is at least one kid that sells burner phones. Who needs phone service anymore with Wi-Fi? But yet you have children selling these devices to children who know you're not having a device. The children will find a way. So we need to be training our parents, just like in the TED Talk, on what to look for and how to talk to these children. And we need to bring this to your states. We need collectively to have this training depending on your ICAC. I will give my presentations to anyone who wants it, just to save as many children as we possibly can. The next group we have to train is our students. When I go in schools throughout the United States and I show kids how we investigate computer crime, and no one online in their social networks and gaming are anonymous. And then if someone is making you do something that you know you don't want to do or making you feel bad about yourself, no one has the right to do that to you. And I tell my children, I am going to show you how we can find out who this is so you do not have to suffer in silence anymore. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I am sick and tired of the cutting. I am sick and tired of the suicides because our children do not think it's ever going to end. So I empower them. I show them. If someone's making you do something you don't want to do, we can make it stop. You just have to tell us. And this is how you collect the evidence, and I show parents and kids what that evidence is, so ICAC people can find out and take that information and run with it and identify our target. As you saw in the video, school staff just standing by, there is a cancer in our school districts where we have attorneys and school district presidents saying that, you heard that there's a naked picture on that phone? Oh, don't touch it. Don't touch it. When you don't touch it, when you don't make a report, that victimization continues and you're really not helping that child. And one of the biggest common denominators that we saw today, ladies and gentlemen, from every story at every speaker, is law enforcement does not know what to do. When I train law enforcement, I teach for the school resource officers, NASRO, National Association of School Resource Officers. I teach for OJJDP. I teach for a lot of the MTUs and post trainings across the country. And when I teach law enforcement, I make a joke. You may not find it's funny, but they know it's funny. You guys, in law enforcement, we have police officers that really work really, really hard at not taking a report. And then they'll laugh. And then they'll hit each other. And I say, how many of you know one of those guys? And they'll all raise their hand. You know what that is? It's because no one is training our patrol officers driving in a car about technology crimes. In Illinois, I tried to pass an 8-hour class in the academy for new recruits. That they have to take 8 hours of cybercrime training because everywhere you go, every crime touches a phone and a computer. But you know who fought us on that legislation? The Police Officer Standards and Training Board. You're going to give us another unfunded mandate, detective? Well, I'm doing this in an effort to save your children. Because when you go to a house and the mom is reporting sextortion of their child, you have police officers who you have not trained, and they're flying by the seat of their pants. Sextortion. Lady, if I got to take this sextortion report, I'm going to arrest your kid too. You still want the report? I didn't think so. And now they are adding to success of that predator. So as I go through my training, and now I am retired, I still do ICAC cases. I live in Lockport, Illinois, and I set up a cybercrimes division there, and I'm setting up another cybercrime divisions in Kane County because there are just too many predators, and they don't have the training to do that. So they deputize me, and now I help them do these types of cases. And I'm still in ICAC, and I'm still contributing, and but I have to figure out a way to scale this. So I'm going to leave you with one final story and solution. I was training in Southern Illinois about 8 months ago. And a gentleman called me from Los Angeles, and he goes, "Are you Detective Wistocki?" And I'm saying, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "Can you make me a cyber parent and send me a certification?" I'm like, "Well, I created a program called Juvenile Justice Online, where instead of arresting or expelling kids, we give them a diversion instead. Instead of arresting the child, not only do we give consequences to the kid, such as community service, watching a video, taking a test, research papers, apology letters, drug testing, we also make their parents watch a 90-minute video as to what they're responsible for their kids' technology. We make them take away their kids' devices, and we give them free monitoring software so they can monitor the kid remotely, and then they follow the kid through the diversion. So instead of arresting that child, they get a diversion. Once they complete the diversion, it's like nothing ever happened. We're not fingerprinting kids anymore. We're not arresting them and ruining their lives because kids make mistakes. So he asked me, he goes, "Detective," he goes, "Can you make me a cyber parent?" I'm like, "Well, I guess you can sign in to juvenilejusticeonline.org and watch the videos I have there for parents. And then I'll send you a test and I'll send you a certification." He goes, "Thank you so much." I said, "Tell me what happened." He says, "Well, I was in a tumultuous divorce with my ex-wife, and we have an 8-year-old daughter. But my ex-wife is best friends with our 8-year-old. And she allows her to have a cell phone, allows her to have Snapchat, Instagram, because all her friends have it. When she spends every other weekend with me, I don't let her have a phone. I don't let her have Snapchat. Because I want daddy time, and she's not even supposed to be on it anyways. And here's the problem, how parents risk their children's innocence. I'm going to put you through an exercise that I put through parents right now. So when I go across the country and I teach 4th and 5th graders, how old are they? How old are 4th and 5th graders? 8 or 9 years old, right? So I ask the kids, how many of you guys got Snapchat? Yeah! How many of you guys get Instagram? Yeah! So you have to be 13 in order to have them. And how old are they? 8 and 9, right? So when their parents allow them to have Snapchat because everyone else has it, and you never want your kid to lose out and miss something, right? So the parents allows the child to lie about their age. And no offense, but some of our kids are not the best mathematicians in the world. So when they're figuring out their social network, let's see, I was born in 2011. How old do I have to be 13 or 14? Oh, heck with it, I'll just round up to 2000. So I'll ask the kids, how many of you rounded up to 2000 to start your network? They all raise their hand. How old are those 8, 9-year-olds now? How old are they? They're 19 years old. So when you have an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old posing as an 18 or 19-year-old, who do you think is going to talk to them? Adults. Who do you think is going to send them pictures and videos? Adults. Who do you think is going to ask them to meet? Because they're adults. And our kids want to be so grown up. And it's okay to meet because nobody's going to do that to me. So the dad told me that his daughter went back to the mother and said, Daddy's being abusive because he doesn't let me talk to my online friends at 8 years old. Mom, being the friend that she is, brings him back to court to limit the visitation. He then says, when he took her to court, and the judge laughed at her and said, don't come back to my courtroom with this stuff until both of you receives 12 hours of cyber parenting training. Well, the judge said that because it doesn't exist. Just to get him out of the courtroom. So when the dad told me this, my wheels were spinning, and I created cyberparenting-101.com. Now parents can log into cyber parenting and get all of this great training, and once they pass the test, they press the button for their certificate, and they can present it to the judge. DCFS in Illinois is actually thinking about making this part of licensing, that if you want your license to be a foster parent, you have to have your certificate. So these are just a few things, ladies and gentlemen, that I wanted to give you. I appreciate your time, and I am in whatever you need. Thank you very much.
I feel like I needed to do jumping jacks or something after that. I mean, that was great. I love to hear about precise, effective actions that we can take, and obviously Rich has a program that does that. I'm going to introduce you to another friend of mine. He's kind of a famous guy in the Navy SEAL world. He's a former SEAL Team 6 sniper. I think he had a reality TV show one time called Sniper for a while. He's done some other very interesting work, but decided to get involved in crimes against children. And he also has a former history of being a federal crimes investigator in the Federal Air Marshal Service. He's been high threat mobile security in charge. But today he's the founder of Vets for Child Rescue. I think we have a short roll we're going to roll before Craig comes up, and we'll have Craig Sawman Sawyer come and join us right after that. Thank you.
In dirty clubs, down dark alleys, in cold corners, innocence is traded for pleasure. For far too long, far too many have looked away. We bring light to the darkest corners of the world, where little chance of freedom exists for victims of trafficking. We are the action needed in this fight. Founded by a Navy SEAL and run by U.S. military veterans and high-level intelligence officers, V4CR is unlike any organization before it. We are individuals of action. Rise with V4CR and help us end child trafficking.
Rob, it's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be part of something so positive as the concept of this task force and joint mission. I've been part of a team for virtually my entire life, and I realize the value of teamwork. So I commend you, Governor and First Lady Bevin, for kicking this off. It's very important, and I'm inspired by your heart. So I see you. As I see it, my personal perspective of the problem with child trafficking is one of culture. Our culture has been systematically beaten down and attacked. I think what we have created is what we would refer to in the special operations community as a permissive environment for child trafficking. We've been bullied into being tolerant of virtually any sort of harm. And I would submit to you that there is a point at which we should stand our moral ground and say no more, especially when it comes to the kids. Back in the 40s and 50s, we had a scientist who was a pedophile, falsifying studies, and he went around and he was very active politically. He went state by state by state, affecting our law enforcement, our legal system, our academic system, and our psychological health care systems on not child trafficking, but pedophilia, making it a softer, more permissive environment, because that's the reality that he wanted to create. So fast forward 4 generations later, now we've got an epidemic. In Europe, the information that they get and the light that things are shown. And in a gay pride parade now, they're forced to have pedophiles in their parade, dictated by the government. So they have that level of control there. They want that level of control here. And we must not allow them to get it, because we see where it's going. And instinctively, we understand that it's wrong. They have no civilian groups that stand up and go after pedophiles and child traffickers. They don't have that level of liberty there. So I say let's embrace the fact that we do here and take action, righteous, lawful action, and stand up against it. And I think we can have a very powerful impact if we decide to do that, and we are deciding to do that. So what's the solution? Well, my solution, with my background and what I had to bring to bear, was to found a nonprofit organization called Veterans for Child Rescue. And the main mission, as I saw, my contribution would be to alert the populace to the threat. Because if I had cancer, I would want my doctor to tell me so that I could begin taking measures to combat it. So we can't fight what we don't know. And I realize that a lot of the American populace do not know what's going on with the children. It's happening right under our noses. It's unthinkable. We have to understand the threat so that we can combat it. So alert the populace, that's my main mission. That's job one for Vets for Child Rescue. So the best, and we do that, we alert the populace through every means that we can. There's celebrities. How many of you guys know Charlie Daniels? He's fantastic American. He doesn't like child trafficking either. So we share placement on the same NASCAR. That's just one of the things that we do. But far and away, the biggest contribution I can make in alerting the populace is a documentary. So for 2.5 years, we've been filming Contraland to bring the truth of what child trafficking is actually about and how it looks inside the continental United States. We travel to 3 countries in Asia as well and ran operations over there. But we are bringing it, it's being completed this month, and so we hope to have it on the air as soon as possible. And I believe it's going to be a very powerful tool in empowering the people of what the threat is and how we can take action against it. And I'm honored to be a part of it. So one of the things that we do when we're filming this documentary, I wanted to show the American populace just how quickly traffickers and predators will come for the kids. If you put out an ad in a sting operation, it would turn your stomach to see not only how many they would come, but even how much more crudely and with reckless abandon come for the boys, even more so than for the girls. And it's just, it's depraved, it's dark, it's harmful, and it's not okay. And if I were to tell the American populace, they couldn't bear really to comprehend it and accept it because it's repulsive to me. I don't want to know about it. I don't want anything to do with it. But I can't turn away knowing that it's there. And so I've got to show the people what they can't bring themselves to believe if they just hear it. So that's the spirit of Contraland. That's my mission. So, yeah. Sorry, I never get numb to it. I reached to the biggest power hitters that I knew that would be in alliance with what I did. So it's important to have good people involved, just like this alliance. I reached to Bob Hamer. Bob Hamer arrested 8 of the top pedophiles in the NAMBLA, North American Man-Boy Love Association organization. It's a legal organization. They're allowed to exist, but what they do to children is a crime. So Bob went undercover for the FBI and got 8 convictions there. He's one of my heroes. Former Marine, Christian man, good dude. Dr. Judith Reisman, another hero of mine. She's a professor at Liberty University and a champion for the children like no other. Jack Farmer is the most famous national asset you've never heard of. He's solved major national security problems for the United States over the decades for virtually every intelligence agency and law enforcement agency. So when you see Tom Clancy movies, they're writing about guys like Jack. He's one of the top handful. And Admiral Charles Moore, he was the Deputy Chief of Naval Operations and an executive with Lockheed. So we've got some fantastic people on our board. We've got fellow organizations that handle other aspects of aftercare, prevention, and so forth. A lot of really, really good people. But where this really kicked into gear for me, and that's just represents some of the agencies involved in our organization, is our daughter. So my wife and I got a phone call in the middle of the night, and it was our daughter, and she was frantic, and she had just been raped at knife point for hours and escaped, thank God. But the sound of her voice, it's not one that I'll ever forget, and it serves to drive me. So we got her back. We go to the hospital. We let her know, hey, we can either insulate you from this, baby girl, or you can fight. She's like, Papa, I'm going to fight. Well, it's going to be invasive. They ask you a lot of hard questions, and there's a lot of medical testing. They're going to poke you with every needle you've ever seen, and she goes, I don't care. I want to get him. Let's fight. I was like, yes. Little scrappy baby girl, man, she had just turned 18. She has a heart to keep him from harming any others. And so that was inspiring to me. I was like, okay, all right, then you want to fight? Then we'll help you fight. Yeah, let's do this. You come from the right family for that. So she decided that she wanted to serve as a junior decoy agent in our joint federal and local law enforcement sting operations, where we go put out ads and let the child predators come and we arrest them. We use junior decoy agents, people that look like they could be very, very young, and to help lure them in. And she's like, I can do that. I'm like, no, you're not doing that. It's dangerous. You got to wear body armor, and this is a real operation, and you're my baby girl, and you're not going anywhere near harm ever again. And her counselor and my wife and our team and our investigators said, Craig, you should really let her fight back. And I'm like, God, give me a way out of this. Anyway, ultimately, I decided to let her make that contribution. It was the right call. It was a difficult one, but man, she shined. So that's her watching her first predator be handcuffed and loaded into the squad car after her very first sting operation. You can see she's just kind of processing it there. So her predator was allowed to go through 14 public defenders in 2.5 years. He kept firing them, delaying the trial again and again, and every time it re-traumatized her. And she felt like the system wasn't working for her. But just 3 weeks ago, we finally had his trial. And because he was representing himself, he was allowed to berate her on the witness stand by a pretty soft judge for over 2 hours. Folks, I'll tell you, not just because she was my daughter, but because the prosecuting attorney told me, follow your daughter's lead. When it came to testifying, she dismantled him. She intellectually dismantled that predator who was berating her only by speaking the plain truth. Facts, the factual evidence backed her up and demonstrated that she was telling the absolute truth. And so she fought back very bravely. The result? He was convicted. He was found guilty on all counts. So there's one repeat rapist that'll never rape again, at least not maybe in prison, but that'd be about it. So our daughter also got to assist in another young lady. We were able to recover her. I had met her mother on another operation, and another organization said they knew where her daughter was. And unfortunately, they were lying. But we went to go film it for Contraland, and my heart was broken. I befriended the mother, telling her, my gosh, I don't know how this happened, but I'm here for you. Here's my background, and let's stay in touch. Can I pray for you? Can I make sure you're okay? She's like, yeah, please, please. Well, on Easter Sunday morning, I got a call from my mother. Craig, she's alive, and she's in Texas. And we were able to effect rescue and get her and bring her back to safe haven. That's she and her mother reuniting. And then here we are the next day. So fantastic. But our daughter got to be a part of this and help mentor this girl and love her and just befriend her. So it's a journey. It's a process. So what is needed? What do we all need to do as a society? Well, I think one of the things is we've already done it. We need to unite. We need to join forces. Together we are what we can't be alone. We can all run to our respective corners and work away. But again, my history is teamwork. I understand that the power of teamwork, the multiplication factor of dissimilar people working together to come up with a bigger result and bigger solutions. So I think this is a beautiful thing. And we need judges and DAs who will prosecute, because it pains me to admit that not all will. Some of them are being put into office specifically because they will not prosecute child sex crimes. And the big billionaires putting them in those positions know it. That's why they're being put there. We have to fight back. We have to assert ourselves as citizens. It's fantastic to see good people in office who mean business and mean to do good. All is not lost. I think we're turning a corner right now for the good. We can educate the travel industry. We've got a deal going with the TSA, my organization, to empower them on how to spot when a child's being trafficked. We need to do the same thing, sea, air, and land. Shipping, busing, Greyhound, there's a lot of bus movement and so forth. Trucking industries, there's a lot of ways that they move the kids. But if everybody's empowered with how to stop it and intervene, we can do a lot of good there. So law enforcement, a lot of them don't know how to process a child. I'll just confide in you, there was one law enforcement unit in southern Arizona. They said, Craig, we will get a big truckload full of dope and we process that. That's routine. We know how to do that. But if there'll be several children in there, we're not really trained or equipped and prepared to process them. So we just kind of send them back across the border. or send them to another location. I'm like, man, you need to exploit them in the right way for the intelligence and lead to the network of how they got there so we can stop it from happening to others. There's a lot that needs to happen there. So how do we empower our law enforcement? Well, they need training, education on how to do that. How is that done? Because it's a different aspect of enforcing the law. Separate the adults from kids when you make a stop and let's go, hey, are these your parents? Hey, are those your kids? What are their birth dates? What are their middle names? Do you even know? Because a lot of times the traffickers won't. They'll wing it, but they'll be wrong. So how do we empower them with that? We give them the training, the education, the support to know that they'll be able to make prosecutions, and that takes funding, and that's another political solution. We have to hold our elected officials' feet to the fire and say, this is something that we want as a society. This is important to us. We need this. We demand this. And then we can affect that change. And law enforcement officers can begin solving those problems as well that are happening a lot of times right under their noses, and they may not necessarily recognize it. So that's a good thing. We can do this. I would say that the penalty for refusing to be involved in our political system is being governed by our inferiors. And I think over the course of our lifetimes, we've kind of learned that to be true. We American citizens, good people, we work hard, we love our families, and we tend to our business, and we don't like politics because it's repulsive and it's contentious, it's ugly. But if we just leave it to the crooks, they'll take over and they'll run everything. So we good people have to stand up, inhabit the offices, hold our elected officials' feet to the fire, and demand better representation, and then we'll get it. And I've seen fantastic examples of that. So that's what I mean to tell you today. I appreciate your involvement and interest in this situation. It's very important. And I would say, due to the turning away of the American populace over the years, this epidemic has grown so pervasive that now is the time when we need to stop and face it. So let there be no more turning away. Let's do this. Thank you all for your involvement. That's all I've got for you today. Take care.
Wow. We have one more guest we're going to introduce. I think we're squeezing this in before lunch. Another important person, I think, in the battle to protect children. A wise man once said, the hardest thing there is to confront in life is evil. And child trafficking and child exploitation is evil. It's one of the most evil things, if not the most evil thing in the world. And like Craig said, we have to stamp it out. And we just have to make our mind up about it and be one in mind with the First Lady and the Governor. I think we need to take this all the way to Washington, D.C., don't you think, Gov? And get a task force there and get them working with us. And thank you for all of you that come from different states here today to support the Governor and the First Lady on this initiative. So the next person I want to introduce, I actually met because of Christy Black, a wonderful lady sitting over there, going through some problems in her life not with trafficking, but with the court systems and the threat of children being removed from their parents. And Governor Bevin last night at dinner and spoke a lot about the statistics involved with what happens when children enter into foster care. So we have some success stories, and unfortunately we have a lot of bad stories, and a lot of source of human trafficking comes from children being taken away from their families, and particularly from their mothers. So you're gonna meet Dr. Michael Stone here in a minute. He's a professor of clinical psychiatry at the Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons. He also has some really famous book collection. I think he has the largest collection in the world of books dating back hundreds of years on psychology. He's quite an expert on the subject of the criminal mind. He's a forensic psychiatrist. But in recent years, he's shifted his attention to crimes against children, and children in particular, and the importance of children and the bonding with their parents, and what happens to their minds when that bond is broken and the state tries to take over and run control. So help me welcome Dr. Michael Stone, and he'll share a story with you.
I was all set to read a 10-page thing that I wrote, but I'm going to just try to talk it through because it would be too long, and it would take away from some of the topics that we've heard this morning, which are eviler than much of the evil that I've been writing about. I first became aware of some of the terrible things that could happen to children when I was working at New York. I was running a unit at New York Hospital Westchester, and there was a girl who was totally mute. She didn't say a word. She was 18 years old. It took 13 months before she finally said anything. We thought she was maybe a catatonic schizophrenic, or she was terribly depressed. What the hell? We didn't know. And finally, there was a good therapist who was familiar with incest in college students, and she was able to get this girl to finally acknowledge what happened to her. Her oil executive, wealthy father, she was the eldest of 8, had committed incest with her since she was about 8 or 10 years old, and finally to the point where she became pregnant. And then he drove her, as she finally confessed, he drove her with the mom in the car to an abortion clinic 100 miles away, and then abandoned her. She then had to hitchhike back or walk much of the way back to New York City and ended up in the hospital. It took her many years before she made a kind of recovery, and that was the first that put me in mind of the frequency of incest as a factor in many seriously disturbed, mostly female patients. There's a few father-son incest, or even mother-son, but mostly, of course, the victims are young girls. Then there was a patient we had on the unit that Dr. Kernberg and I were in charge of at the Psychiatric Institute in New York City. She was an actress in the Andy Warhol, one of the early actresses in his filming, etc. Unbeknownst to him, she too was an incest victim from a very wealthy father out in California, and she had run away from our hospital. We were not able to give us completed treatment as we wished to. Ultimately, she, after being briefly in the film with Andy Warhol, she went out and tried to do other things. Not too long afterwards, she was about to get married. She felt unworthy because of her incest, as if she was a bad girl rather than the father was an evil person, and she committed suicide. So these are some of the things that alerted me to the evil that's out there. And another evil that is, if you're wealthy and do these terrible things, like the oil executive or this man who was the husband of was the woman that was wealthy, ran the Southern California Railroad, you do not go to jail forever. In other words, the victim knows that daddy isn't going to go and to be in prison for the rest of his life, so that you will be free from his threat that he's given you. He's going to kill you if you tell anyone, which is a very big evil. But I've been interested in more recent years with the bad things that can happen in custody cases, where the child or children end up with the less worthy parent. I've done about 55 custody cases, been expert witness in those cases over the years, and I've learned how very infrequently it is that the better parent ends up with the children. All kinds of things go wrong. Child Protective Services, in the old days, before the divorce rate went up in the 60s to where half of the families divorce and so many children experience divorce, the Child Protective Services did their work was easier then, because they were usually involved in cases where there was serious physical abuse of a child, maybe to the point of having broken legs or bleeding, and it was obvious, what had to be done, and Child Protective Services protected, the children. There was no question about what needed to be done. But then in the more recent years, since the divorce rate went up, there are now a tremendous number of custody cases. And of course, again, when there's divorce and the parents are at least reasonable enough people that they respect each other and have good thoughts about what needs to be done for the children, they make an agreeable arrangement, and Child Protective Services has no role anymore. They don't hear about those cases. They only hear about the worst cases. And I divided my 55 cases that I'm most familiar with into who got the kid. Was it the good mom, the bad mom, the good dad, or the bad dad? And I discovered that looking at that way, 3 out of 5 times, it was, in other words, 60% of the cases, it was the bad dad that got the custody of the children through all kinds of trickery and chicanery. So I can tell you brief stories of some of these. Well, there was one in California some years ago where the mother and parents, they had twin daughters. The mom and dad divorced, and the father lived apart, but he himself didn't work. It was his own father who owned many, many square miles of farmland in Northern California. So the man who was the actual dad got all this money from his own father. When he would have custody for the usual, Wednesday and alternate weekends kind of arrangement that's so common, he would diddle one of the twin girls. They were 5 and 6 years old, and he would and did it to the point where one time there was bleeding in the vaginal area, and the mother saw that and tried to bring it to the attention of a pediatrician and so on, who verified that indeed the girl had been violated. Child Protective Services was brought into the case, and there were several workers who agreed very much with the mother and tried to take custody, all of his arrangements away from the father, but the father, being the wealthiest, or the son of the wealthiest person in the community, was able to twist the legal system in such a way that the mother was considered mentally ill, which even though she wasn't, and he ended up with custody of the girls. One of the first many outrages that I have seen in the custody system, and one of the problems was that the head of the Child Protective Services, unlike all of the workers under her, all of whom were knew that the mother was the right person, she was intimidated, by the power of the grandfather in the community, and told the girls to sort of hush up, don't make too much of a noise about it. And so therefore, it was the bad dad that got the kids. Wasn't long after that, I became involved with another case that was a very big headline case in New York, of a woman who had twin girls, again, by a man. They were not married, but then they lived together for a while. But one particular day, when he had some day off and wanted to take the two girls to Central Park in New York, for a pleasant afternoon, accompanied by their nanny, he told the nanny, well, you wait here on a bench, and I'm just going to take the girls a little bit further. They can watch some of the things in the park. But he used that opportunity to violate one of the twin girls and give her, again, a case of vaginal bleeding, which the mother became aware of, checked it out with the pediatrician, certified, no question what happened, and she then sued for full custody of the two girls. But there was a court-appointed, and Child Protective Services in this case was overwhelmed by the power of the wealthy father to hire attorneys and psychiatrists to evaluate the situation, and he managed to find somebody, a psychiatrist, to call the mother a paranoid, a psychotic paranoid, as if the story she was telling about what the man did was a vicious lie instead of being the actual truth. And luckily, the woman had a sister who was very wealthy, and she spent $900,000 over a period of years until she could finally, and she was remanded to treatment with me, so as if she needed therapy, which of course she didn't. What she needed was forensic help. She didn't need any therapy. And it took her that much time, that much money to wrest the girls away from the father. And they are now 18 years old, in college, and doing very nicely, and having almost no contact with the father. They live with the mother. And that led me, by the way, to borrow or translate a phrase from one of the plays of David Mamet, who wrote a play called The American Buffalo, which involved a petty thief and a pawnbroker. And what the main line in that play was a bit vulgar. It was, and so I translated it into Latin as though it was not said by the pawnbroker, but by Cicero. And it was, pecunia loquitur quam minimum quam sterci ambulat torus, which means, and if you can excuse the vulgarity, money talks, but bullshit walks. Because that is what happens in a great majority of these cases. In the next case, however, it wasn't so much money, it was a little bit different. There was a fellow from Europe came to this country and had married a woman, who came from Middle Eastern family, and they had a 6-year-old. The woman, they had both been models, and that's how they met in New York City. But she was a tempestuous, very volatile woman, and they lived in apartments next to, just a few doors down from each other when they were beginning to separate. And the neighbors would say that the mother was yelling and screaming at the kid, even though the kid really hadn't done anything. And that she also did peculiar things, like she would make photographs of herself nude with Arabic words across her chest in red ink. And she also had another shot she made of herself where she was in a long white gown, except there was a pistol attached to her ankle. And the husband, former husband, insisted that she get therapy as a borderline patient, which was not far off the mark. However, I saw her a couple of times. That's how I got to know them. And she had very little interest in treatment, so that didn't go anywhere. It did get involved in the family court situation in the unusual way. He said, well, look, my dad has an extra home in one of the European countries. Let's all go there, the three of us, and maybe you'll settle down and things will be okay, and we can live in my dad's old place. So the three of them went, to Europe, lived in the house of the man's father. And within 1 week, however, the woman had already cheated on her husband, with another man, and had stolen the passports of her and the boy and came back to the U.S. That's abduction. And it took about a year with many cases, law cases involved along the way, when finally at family court, I was able to convince the judge that the man was the worthy parent, the woman was very disturbed, and for once, the judge had no difficulty in agreeing with me and The father got the child, went back to Europe, and that's where they are now, that the mother has nothing to do with the child. So that was one of the cases where the Child Protective Services was only briefly involved, but it was really the evaluators, and finally the judge that did the right thing. Now, there's other cases that have much less fortunate outcomes. There was one I'm still connected with. It involves a woman in New York City who had come from China originally, and she married, she almost married a man 18 years ago, except he backed out of the marriage at the last minute. They had a daughter, and when the daughter was about 2, he accused the mother of striking the little girl, which had not happened. But nevertheless, at this point, Child Protective Services was called in, and they believed the father. What happened after that, there was then evaluations by social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, etc., who took the father's side and prevented the mother from having anything to do with the girl for about 12 years, until finally I was brought in as an evaluator and said that the mother was the more worthy parent. And by that time, the girl was 16, but she had become very depressed and sometimes suicidal. She had a hospitalization. There was more trouble, more back and forth, with the judges and the legal system. And finally, the whole situation became moot. She turned 18, and she was then free to be with her mother, which is where she is now. But there was a great deal of trouble along the way. It took 16 years, in effect, for the situation to finally have the proper outcome. Another weird case with custody, there was a man of 52 who was exactly double the age of his wife, who was 26. He had never had an extended relationship with a woman in his whole life before. This was the first time he had an extended relationship. He was a wealthy banker from one of the southern states. They lived, however, in New York. And he had a habit, the sex that he had had during all his adult years was in massage parlors and brothels. And oftentimes, since he also owned a place in Mexico, where he would go to a massage parlor, the 15-year-old girls, pretending to be 18 so there wouldn't be any statutory rape charges available against him, etc. And he never really even spent a whole night with his wife. He would have sex, then maybe go to his own room. In the meantime, he gave the wife 3 different STDs, not the same bug, but 3 different bugs along the way. And he also insisted that she had, apart from the hair on her head, all her hair removed so that she looked like an adolescent girl, since he was basically what's called technically a hebephile, which means you pedophile with adolescents as opposed to children 10 years old or less. He would then come back from oftentimes the massage parlor or the brothel and sleep naked in the bed with his daughter. That finally led the woman to insist upon divorce, at which point he injured her, breaking 3 ribs and later giving her a black eye, which his attorneys pretended didn't happen, and so on. And he also, because he was the one with the money, was able to mount endless appearances in court, with measures, countermeasures, and appeals and all that, overwhelming whatever she could bring into the case against him, so that he ended up gaining custody. And also, for example, when the girl got old enough to be like 6 and going to school, the mother wanted the little girl to go to a nearby, very nice public school in New York City. And he said, no, I won't let her go to one of those schools with all those Jews and blacks. He did not use such a nice word as I'm using. And that alone, when the mother testified, should have been enough for any judge, seems to me, to say that man is a bad man. The custody is going to go with the mother. But money talks and bullshit walks. He got custody, still has it, and it's only occasionally that the mother's been able to travel down to the southern state, to see her own child. So this raises the question: what can we do? What can we do? So it seems to me there's several things. One is, to rely on the best possible evaluators, and also as far as Child Protective Services, they're oftentimes underpaid, to pay the Child Protective Services better so that the governments can hire the very best ones, who will do whatever has to be done to evaluate, find out who is the more deserving parent if it's a question of difference, and make sure that the better parent gets the child. Another thing is to rely on evaluators of the highest academic quality and potential. I can just tell you, only 3 days ago, I became involved in a case where a very worthy woman with 3 daughters had been separated from a husband who he and his father had a big barn somewhere in one of the southern states, Alabama, and were violating the girls sexually, but also torturing them physically. What I was able to do was to call, and this is what I would advise people to do in general in the cases of this sort. I called the medical school in Birmingham and talked to the chairman, said, tell me the name of the highest ranking child psychiatrist in the child psychiatry service in your medical school. And I got a hold of that woman, and she volunteered, to involve herself with this case. So she would have the most prestige and the most clout to be able to, when the evaluation day comes, to tell the judge, in this case, the mother absolutely deserves custody, that the father and the grandfather are bad people. So that if you can get the most prestigious, the person with the most clout, the most to be the evaluator, rather than somebody that makes his living as almost a court functionary. There are several other cases that I'm involved in where the social worker, the psychologist, and the psychiatrist make their entire living doing custody work, and just looking for the wink in the eye of the judge, who to give custody to, if the judge is a pro-mom person or a pro-dad person or whatever, totally corrupt. So that rather than to rely on people who make their living doing it, you want to have people who are independent, absolutely fair, and have such high rank that their evaluations really carry weight and amount to something. And then I think in that way, we can begin to improve the mess that custody has been in, and that Child Protective Services have been hampered in their ability to be as good as they usually are, and so that the whole system can gradually improve from what it is today, which is pretty awful.
Thank you, Dr. Stone. I think the moral of the story is we want to make sure our children have the best representation that we can possibly give them. And we also, I could borrow some of the ideas from Detective Rich was talking about education. Why can't we educate the judges? Shouldn't judges have some special qualifications? Maybe it's time to modernize the system a little bit. They're probably still working on really old methodologies. So anyway, thank you, Dr. Stone. Thank you again for having us. I believe John's going to come up now, and thank you again.
So just a couple of announcements before we start lunch. There are 2 buffets set up out in the foyer. They're identical, and the eating will take place in here. And we're going to start promptly at 12:15. So just before I release you and ask the blessing over the food, I want to share this with you. There's a large fish bowl on the table outside the middle set of doors. That's our One Mind 50 States display. And there are thumb drives in the bowl, so please take one. Those drives include information about what each of the 50 states is doing to address today's issues. So if you will, bow with me in prayer. Father, we thank you so much that we can come before you. We thank you so much, Father, that you have gifted each and every individual sitting in this room with the unique qualities that it takes to carry this initiative forward, an initiative that is very precious to you. Father, you said, when you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it unto me. Father, Lord, help us take that serious. We ask, Lord, that you bless each and every individual, every organization, every home represented in this room. Bless this food to our bodies, and we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. You're dismissed for dinner.